The work of the Institute will advance global understanding of intercultural relations, migration, racism, religion, democracy, politics and governance, shaping important agendas and informing the debate. And if you think of just those words and what we've been watching on our televisions and on our radios and on the various blogs and various sites we all read these days, I think this is going to be quite an interesting place because none of those words are just neutral. They all carry great potency and power and subjective and objective views with them. And I think one of the great challenges we are going to have over the next little while is to be able to be firm and to stand and say some of the things that I absolutely, not only as Vice-Chancellor but as an individual, believe need to be said in Australia.
I think what we have managed to think about in terms of a major leading research institute in social sciences and humanity is to think about what areas of public policy, what areas of public debates, what areas of international governance, if you like, can we engage with, and can we perhaps have a say in shaping their respective agendas. And doing a very systematic analysis of our core strength in terms of expertise, in terms of quality outputs, in terms of where we are heading with our appointments at all levels, ECRs, early career researchers and to research professors, we very much operate at four levels which are interconnected by almost intrinsically by definition. We have that cultural dimension, and we'll highlight some of the research we're doing on that level. The diversity and identity area, I think, is what matters to many people and what touches a lot of us in terms of how we are dealing with increased manifestations of diversity, the human mobility that is taking place increasingly in different ways and forms is engendering these new forms of diversity, and how we deal with diversity, how we understand it, and how it penetrates the way we operate on a daily basis is extremely important to us. From intercultural relations to governance arrangements to even pedagogical approaches, I think we need to understand that, and that particular stream is very important to us. And then probably more of a global also perspective to what we do is development and human rights. And I like to highlight the human rights perspective to development, because in many ways, what we have seen previously, in particular in relation to the MDGs, is that developmental goals, if you like, as set out in the Millennium Vision, really have perhaps ignored some of those cultural issues that are extremely important in pursuing developmental goals across the world, but in particular in Africa and parts of Asia. So we would like to go back and bring a balance to how we view development in a way that is sustainable, but also that is culturally sensitive and culturally inclusive. So in terms of really looking at that cross-general overview of the themes that we are pursuing in the new institute, and showing you that we very much already doing some of that research in current grants that are held by institute members. We mentioned that the institute also is host to the UNESCO Chair for Cultural Diversity and Social Justice, and also the recently established Australian Intervention Support Hub. That's something that we are very much starting right now. So the foundations, or the foundation blocks, if you like, are being put in place. And we hope that will bring a more holistic approach to this debate. I think CV is important, but it has been in many cases hijacked by a particular approach. And we are hoping that our own emphasis on social and political dimensions of this debate will be brought to the public discussion, if you like. We have a lot of research projects that are funded by the ARC. I think my last count was about 20, Kayla. So we currently hold as many as 20 ARC grants in the Institute, which is an unbelievable number for a social sciences and humanity research unit, if you like, in Australia. Some of them, and I won't go into the specifics, for instance, going back to diversity, look at the role of religion in public spaces and aspects of interconnection between religiosity and political engagement and social belonging. Some of it looks at religion and its relation to urban planning and its relation to the way we construct our cities of the future. Some of the research also deals with heritage and heritage destruction and the extent to which in some of these volatile areas, heritage destruction can be linked to some form of political violence. So how do people feel about their cultural identity being threatened and the extent to which that engender particular political behavior or sociological behavior? We also have a particular strength in this institute in understanding racism and also working on what we call countering racism. We have a number of IRC grants which look in particular at the extent to which institutions like the museum can be used as a platform for changing youth attitudes towards race and race relations. We have, at probably more global level, a number of projects which look at international relations, focusing on the role of religious ideologies in that, looking at the extent to which certain regional arrangements are being put in place following wars, following conflict, following destruction. And I think the list goes on and on. And I wouldn't want you to perhaps do them, not do them the right thing in terms of explaining some of this research. But we also have a number of projects that look really quite innovative in many ways. Well, we re-examine the notion of indigeneity in Australia and the extent to which social and biological aspects of indigeneity need to be reconsidered within new frameworks. And that's really anthropological research of the first order, cutting-edge research that some of our members are doing. So really trying to put all of that in terms of a vision for the Institute, what we're really wanting to do is genuinely understand some of these complex phenomena. We say complex because in many ways we think that, for instance, a problem of development is perhaps an applied economics issue. It is not an applied economics issue only. It needs to be looked at more broadly. We think that heritage destruction, it's only about tangible heritage, and it's only about what people do in terms of affecting existing sites in particular areas. We actually think that heritage plays a fundamental role in shaping national identities and therefore in shaping individual identities. And therefore, dealing with heritage destruction in that way would allow us to understand the dynamics of national discourses and identity. And also the same thing applies to religion and religiosity and how people articulate their religious identities in ways that not only allows them to remain faithful to those values, but also would open up doors for social engagement in probably more authentic manners than otherwise would be expected. So I think that really gives us a very, perhaps a good snapshot of the kind of research that we do. But in all of that, and I say in all of that, our orientation has been, will be, always global. And what I mean by global is that we are very much open to engaging with agencies, with departments, with international agencies in particular, through the UN, through collaborative partnerships to undertake some of this research. And this has two reasons. One of them is probably more, I wouldn't say opportunistic, but I would say instrumentalist perhaps, which is it helps research agendas being achieved. But the other one, and it's more important to me personally, but I think more important to a lot of us here, is we want genuinely, and this is particularly through my UNESCO chair, we want genuinely to bridge the knowledge divide. There is immense evidence that shows that if you look at the knowledge production worldwide, you will find that a disproportionate amount of that knowledge construction comes from the global north. The global south, which is being studied, being examined, being looked at, doesn't contribute to that knowledge, even when the knowledge relates to it. So we're hoping that really we would work with our peers, our colleagues in parts of Africa, parts of Southeast Asia, in other parts of the Pacific, where we work collaboratively on producing the knowledge that relates back to them, rather than us projecting the images of what we think they are and what we think they are doing in particular areas. So I think that partnership is both to achieve research outcomes, but also to empower, epistemologically speaking. And I think that's what global orientation for us means, being genuinely open, not only to doing, but open to understanding too, and provide that cross-cultural perspective to what we do.